Today, we're going to step inside a university classroom to answer a pretty simple question. But we're not going to use a bunch of dry statistics or big academic studies. Nope. We're going to use their own words, their actual experiences, and their hopes to paint a real picture of what it's like to be a student today.
I mean, we hear so much about this generation, right? But what are their day-to-day worries? What do they think their strengths are? What are they really aiming for? Well, let's find out. So, to do this, we looked at the anonymous survey responses from 47 students. They're all taking a single class called Wellness and Life Extension at a university in Thailand. Now, it might seem like a small group, but trust me, their answers are incredibly insightful. What you start to see isn't just a collection of data points. It's a portrait of a generation that's dealing with huge amounts of pressure, they're wrestling with totally new ways of learning, and they are actively, consciously searching for a healthier, more balanced way to live.
Okay, so first things first, who are these students? I mean, to really get what they're saying, we first have to understand them. And what becomes obvious right away is just how diverse this one classroom really is.
The first thing that just jumps out at you is the international mix. Yeah, a majority are Thai, but in that same room, you've got students from China, from Myanmar, from Russia, and even some with dual nationalities. So this isn't just one perspective, it's a genuinely global one. And that diversity doesn't stop there. Look at what they're studying. They are not all from the same field. You've got students from commerce and accountancy sitting right next to people studying communication arts in the Faculty of Arts. Think about that. All these different ways of thinking coming together.
And this just makes that whole global identity thing feel so much more personal, you know? These aren't just statistics. These are actual people, born in places like Japan, Germany, Australia, and Russia, all meeting in one classroom in Bangkok. It's pretty amazing.
But for all their different backgrounds and stories, this group is tied together by a really powerful shared experience, the struggle of learning online. So when they were asked about the biggest hurdles, their answers were almost immediate and super consistent. You had the usual suspects, unstable internet, the constant battle for focus with all the distractions at home, tech glitches, and a really big one, a deep lack of interaction with their classmates. But that fifth one, wow, that one really hits hard, the mental health challenges of just plain stress and isolation.
And one student, they just captured that whole feeling in 4 simple words. This wasn't just, an inconvenience for them. For so many, it was a deeply emotional and psychological fight that kind of defined their whole university experience. And at the same time, the fundamental parts of university life, they just broke down. Casual chats, teamwork, learning from each other, it all became a huge challenge, just like this student put it so bluntly. Now, this slide shows something fascinating, a real conflict. On one hand, you have a slight majority, just over 51%, saying they felt confident they could learn online. Like, I can do this. But at the very same time, an even bigger majority felt that the education they were getting was just not the same as being in a real classroom. It's that classic feeling of, yeah, I can handle it, but I know it's not as good. So with all this academic pressure and the strain from online learning, why did these 47 students specifically sign up for a class on wellness? Well, their answers show a really clear, proactive way of thinking.
For a lot of them, it was a totally practical choice. It was like an antidote to burnout. They weren't just grabbing a class for credits. They were actively looking for tools to help them cope with how intense their other classes were.
But it goes even deeper than just managing stress. There's this really clear sense of proactive self-care. It's not just about surviving the semester, it's about building a foundation for a healthier life long-term.
And yet you still see this note of caution. When they were asked about a wellness field trip, the class was split almost perfectly down the middle. About 49% said yes, but 51% were unsure. This really seems to reflect that kind of lingering post-pandemic hesitation, a real uncertainty about group activities that's just become their new normal. Okay, so we've had a look at their academic world. Now let's dive into their inner lives, their hopes, their fears, and what actually genuinely makes them happy.
When we asked them to name their own strengths, a really clear pattern started to show up. They see themselves as hardworking, as adaptable, patient, and open to learning. So, despite all the challenges they've been through, this is a generation that really sees itself as resilient and capable.
But here's the flip side of that hard-working coin. When they were asked what one thing they'd change about themselves, a really common answer was this desire to just escape the pressure of their own thoughts. So the same drive that helps them succeed is also creating this intense internal battle. And after all that complexity, their source of happiness is, well, it's just beautiful and simple.
Overwhelmingly, they said what makes them happy isn't some big achievement or material things. It's just spending time with the people they love, their family and their friends. But their concerns are very, very real and totally focused on the future. They're worried about their grades and university life, about what their career path is going to look like, how to manage their stress, and the state of the economy. These are the practical pressures that are on their minds every single day.
So finally, how do these personal hopes and fears all add up into bigger goals? Well, it turns out their ambition goes way beyond just themselves.
And this slide just captures their dual focus perfectly. On a personal level, their goal is self-improvement, to become a better version of themselves. But it doesn't stop there. Their goal for other people is to take what they learn about wellness and share it so that their families, their friends, and their communities can also live healthier, more balanced lives.
So what we have here is a generation that's globally connected, that is incredibly aware of the pressures they face, and is actively seeking balance, not just for themselves, but for everybody else too. And while this is just a small snapshot, it leaves us with a really powerful question. What does this tell us about the future they're trying to build?